Welcome back. I'm reading chapter 16 today of Missionary Life with Billy and Joe Wilson. It was so exciting to return back to Rwanda. Bob and Merle, who had come to stay and work in Rwanda while we were gone, had decided to just stay there, and we would work together until the Lord released them. We were dear friends, and Merle was more like a sister to me than a co-worker. We got along great. She had her own ministry as she was a teacher and a minister. She actually went on from Rwanda to get her doctorate and would become a huge blessing to all Bible schools in Africa. We had all decided, me, Billy, Bob, and Merle, to take a few months to try and learn a bit of the language of Rwanda. It was called Kinyarwanda. We found a Christian lady in one of the churches that convinced us that she could teach us. So we set up days and times that she could come and meet with us and teach us Kinyarwanda. She was a godly woman that always prayed before or after the classes started, and she began to teach us all about Rwandan culture. We just became very close to this lady. Her name was Mary. She had a daughter, but was not married and avoided talking too much about herself. She just seemed to all of us to be a very private person. We also realized that she had never taught another language before to adults, so we all just worked with her and really tried to learn. Many times we would offer her a cup of tea or coffee, as all of our classes were in the McCulley's home. She never once accepted the tea or the coffee. We also invited her to join us in a meal. She declined that also. We could never understand why. We also noticed that she would be sick quite often, to the point that class had to be canceled several times. One day, after she was so sick, she had to be put in the hospital. We found out that she had AIDS. She had been infected by her husband, and he had passed away from this disease. She had kept all of this from us. Before Mary died, her disease had affected her brain. She became angry, very hostile. Once she came to our house and threw rocks at our windows. We knew this was not really her, but the way that the disease was affecting her. Once she went to the police and accused me of attacking and beating her. I was summoned to the police station and questioned. A Rwandan pastor went with us and convinced the police that I had not really done that, but that Mary was very sick and her disease was affecting her mind. We did love Mary very much and was relieved when God gave her the ultimate healing by taking her home. That same year, the year 2000, things were going great in Rwanda, and we noted in a newsletter that Billy had safely delivered bricks and roofing material to 12 churches. He helped put up one tabernacle and 2 tents for new churches. We had seen nearly 300 people come to know the Lord as we traveled and preached all over the country. We had a container shipped to us, and it finally arrived, allowing us to move into our own home that we rented and use our own linens, towels, and dishes that had been supplied once again from our women's ministry group in North Texas. This would be the first time to use all of our own things since the end of 1991, about 9 years. Then, in April 2000, we traveled to Kenya for missions meetings and flew on to the States in May to see Jason graduate from high school. Someone had generously provided the funds for us to go to the States, making the trip home an extra special blessing from the Lord. What a joy to be in Texas at that time for Jason's graduation and to help him get started at Southwestern Assemblies of God University. An added bonus to this trip home was being able to attend our granddaughter Madison Kate's first birthday party. The next 2 years went by really fast, but so much was accomplished. During this time, Billy stayed very busy. He helped in the building of 11 tabernacles, and 2 of these he went over to the Democratic Republic of Congo. There had been a volcano that had erupted and had destroyed 80% of the commercial area in Goma, Congo. Billy also coordinated the relief efforts for Goma, which included purchasing food along with other necessities and coordinating the trucks to transport these items. This relief effort helped several hundred families after this tragedy. Besides traveling around the country and showing the Jesus film, Billy also taught part-time at the Bible school. At that time, there were over 100 students enrolled since opening the doors in June of 1999. I continued to work in the library and also printing all the textbooks and even Sunday school material for layman's training that we did for so many churches. We stayed very busy, and so much was going on as the amount of churches grew. That meant much training had to be done. The normal term on the field as a missionary was 4 years on the field and 1 year back home. So in 2003, it was time for our furlough. We always enjoyed being in Texas for that year to visit so many of the churches that supported us and to give reports of what all had been accomplished. The one thing I most enjoyed was being with my family and seeing old friends that we had not seen for several years. My mother and several of my sisters lived in Alabama, about 650 miles from our rented missionary housing in Texas. I would try to make 2 or 3 trips to Alabama while I was at home. Sometimes I would go with my brother and my sister that lived near me in Texas, and it would be just us, me, my brother Bob, and my sister Wanda. We would go without our spouses and stay with our mother for several days, eating her home cooking that we all had missed so much. And of course, we had big family get-togethers with my other 5 sisters that lived near Mother. What wonderful memories that brings to me now as I write this. One visit I made to Alabama that year was around the New Year holiday of 2004. I knew that the time was growing short for us to return to Rwanda that coming June. So one night, it may have been New Year's Day, I asked Billy if he would be willing to take me one more trip to Alabama to see my mother one more time. He explained to me how he felt we shouldn't go because even though we had no services booked for the next 2 weeks, he just felt we shouldn't go. He really didn't have a good reason not to go. I remember as I prayed that night, I asked the Lord to speak to his heart and change his mind. I could not explain the feeling I had of just seeing my mother one more time. She was in fairly good health, I think she was 83. I may be wrong about that age. Even though she had had heart surgery several years ago, she was able to live in an apartment of the basement of my sister's home and was able to take care of her own needs. My sisters checked on her daily and took her to the store or doctor's appointments as she didn't drive. But for some reason, I had this strong feeling that when we returned to Rwanda, I may not see her again. So I just prayed about it, explained my feelings to God, and asked if it be His will, He would allow me to see her once again before we returned to Rwanda. I went to sleep that night with peace in my heart that God would work it out. And the next morning, when I opened my eyes, Billy was standing by my side of the bed. He looked at me and said, "If we are going to Alabama, you better get up and get packed." This was truly an answer to prayer. And oh, what a wonderful time we had at Mother's. My sister Wanda, that lived in Texas, went with us, and Mother was as thrilled as I was for an unexpected and unplanned visit. My brother Bob was unable to go as he was not feeling well. But I will be forever grateful for those few days with my mother, as I will explain why those days were so special in the next chapter, chapter 17.